Welcome back, Tie and That Guy. Very special Tie and That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham, and this is my good time lover, hugger, snuggler, Timothy
In person.
Franck. And what?
In person.
In person.
Live and in person.
Very special. Ty is in the in the dirty South, like we like to call it. And he's visiting his good pal. And Ty's here in the dirty. And so, you having a good time in the South, man? Yeah?
It's all right.
Not as racist as you thought it would be?
No, it's super racist. But the thing Wes will not tell you is that he lives in the Beverly Hills of the South.
All right. No, no. But how's your trip been so far? Because you guys left and you guys went to Vancouver, went to Virginia, came down to Georgia.
Yeah.
Georgia's the highlight so far. And then where are you going after this?
We'll continue our tour of Confederate states. We're going to Alabama, and then we go to Texas for a couple of days, and then New Mexico, and then Colorado.
Colorado wasn't a Confederate state.
No, but this part of it is the Confederate.
All right.
The Confederate state tour is you and Alabama and Texas. Yeah.
So, listeners, I'm gonna have to apologize ahead of time. I have I don't know what's going on. I was sick last week, and now I'm better, but my ear like closed up, so I can't. It's like I used to get so annoyed at my grandfather. I was like, huh? And I'm like, God damn it, just shut up. Why can't you hear? Fuck you, granddad. And I throw like beer cans at his head and flick cigarettes at him. But now I think karma's came back because I'm like, huh? What'd you say, Sonny? I can't hear anything, and my kid's running around. So
maybe you got one of those Wrath of Khan insect things in your ear. The one that Khan would put in their ears to control them. Maybe you got one of those.
Yeah, but then nothing's controlling me.
Not that you know of.
Oh, so it's like a subtle change?
Subtle, yeah.
Right. So, okay. Well, then be on the lookout if there's anything different about me. Like if I start having like that blow dried hair that Khan has, in the thing. Like these guys are on like a desert planet, like it's where you can't live. It's like, and they got like perfectly airbrushed makeup and their hair's blown out
and just the best outfits.
Great outfits that are tailored to their sculpted
Khan has
bodies.
got the pec display.
Yeah, and all of them are from like Sweden or Scandinavia somewhere. Like they're all like beautiful, tall, blonde people. Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about Black Mirror. What's going to be interesting about this podcast is I'm a fan of Black Mirror. Probably my favorite show of all time is Twilight Zone. Black Mirror reminds me a lot of the Twilight Zone. I know Ty loves the Twilight Zone. I like all anthology series. Like I liked Amazing Stories. I liked Outer Limits. But I think Black Mirror is like up there as one of the better ones. But what's interesting is usually if I like something like the Twilight Zone, I just know everything there is to know about Twilight Zones, particularly the Rod Serling Twilight Zones with the Richard Matheson. And I have all the scripts, and I read the scripts and the guide, and so I know all the Easter eggs and everything like that. Black Mirror, I haven't really done that yet. Like, I haven't really I just watch it as a fan and just enjoy it, but I haven't, like, followed up and listened to all the interviews or read the interviews, and I can tell there's a ton of Easter eggs, like, embedded in it that you can see, like, oh, wait a minute, isn't that Sam Jupiter, isn't that? So, listeners, like, as I'm talking about it, as we talk about certain episodes, you probably have ideas of, like, oh, well, this is the reason why, or this is that, or you should go back and watch that episode or whatever. But I thought it'd be interesting to kind of talk about an episode just as a fan and not really have any inside knowledge or just like what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it. And today I think we're going to focus on two of the Black Mirrors in the latest season, Demon 79 and Loch Henry. And we're going to talk a little bit about, what was the Claudia?
No, it's, is it Joan is awful?
Is it Joanne or Joan? They're both awful.
Yeah.
So I remember Demon 79 really well because I just watched it recently, and I watched Loch Henry recently, but I don't remember. So we, well, the Joan is awful one. The thing I wanted to talk about is it feels very of the time because what's happening on there really has sort of a Chat GPT kind of technology feel to it, and so I thought that was interesting. So it's not so much talking about the episode itself, which I was not one of my favorite episodes, but the way the technology is used in the episode, I think is very current and interesting. correct me if I'm wrong, it does feel like, I mean, it's always been sort of meta a bit like the Black Mirror thing, but it's kind of leaned into that with this season.
I mean, it always was. I mean, the title Black Mirror is a reference to the reflection you get when you're staring at your phone, right? I mean, it's always been about, Black Mirror has always been about how technology creates these weird problems that would not exist without the technology. And it's sort of hyperbolically exploring those weird things. Like the Joan is Awful one is really sort of hyperbolically exploring the idea of AI written content and combined with the fact that everybody puts everything about their lives online. And what happens when somebody says, hey, let's use this AI to write a story using this person's online life as the source material, and then that episode is very much like the extremely exaggerated version of that.
Yeah, I mean, and when I say like more meta, you know, with the Streamberry, and you're watching that and you're seeing episodes and things that's referencing within the Black Mirror universe, and it's really directly commenting.
It gets like self-referential.
Self-referential. And so in the early Black Mirrors, it was really like, beware of these corrupting influences of technology. What's interesting in this season, I feel like it's saying, beware of humanity's corrupting influences on technology. So as opposed to technology corrupting us, we are also, the worst parts of us are corrupting technology.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a feedback loop. Right? We invent technology, that technology then gives us the ability to do something we couldn't do before. We use that new ability in the worst way possible and invent more technology to make us better at being awful.
Right, yeah. Well, and like Loch Henry is one that really resonated with me because it's a story of these two young documentary filmmakers. He's from Scotland. They go back to his hometown. The original movie they wanted to make was about a guy that was like a garden of eggs or something. Like
he was. So let's start. That's good. Let's start with Loch Henry. Yeah. So the idea is these guys were going to make a documentary about a guy who protects these rare endangered eggs. Yeah. And so at one point his girlfriend says, you were going to make a documentary that would play at like a few film festivals and would be loved by like 12 people who care about that kind of documentary, right? Like it's one of those documentaries that you see, it's on Amazon or Netflix, and it's like, the whole documentary is about like one specific kind of like endangered turtle. It was going to be that sort of thing, right? Very focused, very sort of small in scope. And then they are confronted by the idea that they can make a documentary about the thing that destroyed the town he grew up in, which he is very opposed to doing, but his girlfriend sees a real opportunity.
I don't think he's strongly opposed to it. I think
he starts out pretty much not wanting to do it. Yeah, she pushes him to do it.
Right, and I think that
and we should probably talk about what it is. So beware. There's some spoilers here. In the past, in his town, there was a serial killer that had been discovered. He had kidnapped and murdered a bunch of tourists who came to the town. It was a tourist town. It was a beautiful town on a little lake. And the name of the episode is the name of the lake. And then all the tourism dried up because a famous serial killer was discovered in the town. He murdered like 8 people. They found all these bodies, and it destroyed the town. His father was one of the people who discovered the serial killer and was shot trying to capture him and was injured and all that. So the girlfriend says, this is a way better story than the eggs. And he's hesitant. And not without reason, as we discover going through the episode.
I think he's hesitant, but he's easily corruptible.
Yeah.
Because it does in the episode, it does a good job of showing his ambition.
Yes.
And what it is that he is after, and ultimately at the end he gets what he wants.
Well, in typical Black Mirror fashion, subverted version of what he wants.
Subverted version of what he wants. What captured me about this episode is, like, my wife loves true crime. We've watched all the true crime documentaries. I remember watching Makeup and Murder and things like that. And there's always something when I watch these things, there's something in the back of my head where I'm like, I don't know if this just feels weird because it's the worst time in these people's lives.
And it's entertainment for us.
And it's entertainment. And there's something about watching this that is so compelling, and you're driven to know what is happening next and who these people are and what motivates them and why they behave that they behave. But that fascination, when you finish it and you complete the story and you turn it off, you don't feel that satisfied. You feel a little bit like a little gross.
Yeah.
A little bit like, man, I just spent 10 hours on like the worst moment in these people's lives and people doing horrible things. And then the award shows, which they do well in this and go back, but you see like, they're cheering and they're like, we won, like, make him a murderer. And they do this and they're high-fiving each other and they're handing their Emmys and everything. And then at the end they do like, this is really not about us. This is about the victims and trying to like,
They always do that, right? And it's the way you describe it is exactly right because it comes across so false.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not about us and our award that we just got. It's about the victims. But the reality is, you just spent 10 hours making this thing about this horrible thing where people were tortured to death.
Yeah,
and you made it. They always say that they're making it to illuminate, but there's also the prurient entertainment value.
Exactly.
Right? It's always that we made this thing and we know people are into like, because it's got like a sex dungeon.
Yeah.
It's got people tortured to death. It's got young couples who disappear and are found murdered later.
Right.
All this sort of prurient stuff.
And what's really smart about this show is when the girlfriend is laying out all the reasons why they should be doing this, it's the reasons why he doesn't want to do it because it's a personal tragedy.
Yeah.
His father was killed died in how all this played out. He ended up getting poisoned from the bullet that, he was shot with. And so all of the reasons why he didn't want to do it, the first reaction, like when his morality was intact, he didn't want to exploit his family, he didn't want to exploit his town, his father passed away, are the reasons why it has a hook and why it's interesting. And so you see then start to really get that as like, this is why this is unique. The things that morally I didn't want to do it are the things that's going to make it successful and make it a big thing and make my career and push it forward. So then he ends up being seduced by this thing and leaning into it. And what's interesting is every time there was another layer that came out, his girlfriend was like, I love it. It just made her more excited.
Yes.
More excited and more like feverish.
Because all the things you're talking about are the things that make a story like that pop as entertainment.
Right.
So, if Princess Diana had gotten, sick, she got leukemia and she died.
Right.
Probably there would have been some stories about it, but it would have passed quickly.
Right.
But the fact that she was fleeing from paparazzi and her husband had just left her for this other woman, all those prurient details, that's what makes the story pop. That's what makes it a bigger deal.
Yeah.
And so every time they hear about another nasty detail, the girlfriend, she's just seeing dollar signs. She's just saying, this is, you mean more people were murdered? Oh, that's great.
Right.
Oh, you mean they were hidden in this sex dungeon and tortured? That's great.
Right.
And that is the sort of central conflict of this kind of story.
Yeah.
And I think that's the Black Mirror story of this.
Yeah.
Is the things that draw us to these stories are, as you described, the worst days in other people's lives.
Yeah.
We're going to turn that into entertainment for ourselves.
Within this episode, within the rules of the world, there's these karmic consequences. Like what ends up happening to her is she gets a little too close to the fire. And, well, I guess there's a lot of spoilers in this, but what is it, Bergerac? Was the detective show that the mother...
Yeah. The thing in the story is that there's all these VHS tapes. We all have them. The black spine VHS tapes sitting on the shelves. Where if your mom was circling to Night Court, there'd be like 10 tapes on there with like 40 episodes of Night Court.
Magnum PI,
that kind of thing.
Nobody's mom's into Night Court. Anyway, go ahead.
Some moms are into that. Bull. I mean. Some women like the tall bald man.
Was he a closeted sex symbol?
I think so.
Oh, really?
I think some women are into bull.
Oh, interesting. But I know Joseph's into bull. He really likes bull.
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
But so she's got all these tapes from this BBC crime show that are on the shelf, which we discover later. There's more on those tapes.
Yeah.
It's like a crime show, and there's a little true crime on the end of those tapes.
It's like Chekhov's gun, right? You see the tapes, and you know that they're going to play into the story.
Well, they did that a bunch in this episode because the other Chekhov's gun is he's talking about why the crime went unpunished for so long or undiscovered for so long, and he says, this is a dangerous country. People wander through the woods, they slip and they fall, or they fall off a cliff, or they fall in a river, or whatever. That happens all the time. So people thought that's what was happening, and of course, that is exactly what winds up happening to one of our main characters.
Right.
So that had already been established that if you go running through the countryside at night, bad things can happen to you here. And then we see it actually play out.
Yeah. And, when he comes home, the mother is like that Scottish homemaker.
Shepherd's pie, man.
Sweet shepherd's pie.
Yeah.
She's, baking all this. And there's a sweetness to her, and you're like endeared to her for that character, whatever that she has. And as the story progresses, they do a really good job of setting up. In terms of this, do we kind of go? I don't want to jump on the reveal at the end.
Yeah. I mean, we've given some sort of story setup spoilers, but I don't think we should do the reveal.
Yeah. Oh, fuck it. Let's just do it. Like, all right, spoiler alert.
Full spoiler alert. Les is about to give away the twist.
Full spoiler alert. Okay, I was trying to avoid all of this, but what's interesting is that the more they dive into this crime, the more he realizes, he already knew his family was intertwined, but the story that he had is realized is not the real story. And it slowly starts to come out in very creative and clever ways that his father, who was a sheriff of the town at the time, or a constable, or what they're called, and his mother were also partners with this guy. And they would kidnap tourists, certain people like this couple, and they would bring him down in this chamber, and they would record it, and they would torture them and do these terrible things. And the wife, the mother, the sweet mother who's making shepherd's pie, was recording this and preserving it in these Bergerac detective series tapes, VHSs that are on their wall when they come in. So when his girlfriend, they had to use one of the tapes to record over, right? And why were they using? By the way, I was going to ask you, why were they using VHS recording devices?
Well, because they found in the house. This is actually an important plot point. They found in the house an old VHS camera, and he decides to use it because that'll give them that old VHS grainy quality sort of feel to the documentary that they're going to make.
Right.
So they're going to use that camera when they go down into the sex dungeon to get that sort of old school feel.
Yeah.
And the only tapes that are available that you can record on are these old.
Really
So
smart.
she grabs one and they use it to record. So she's doing some editing of the footage that they shot. She's downloading the footage from the camera to her editing software. And the tape runs all the way through and then starts to go into the stuff that was on the tail end of the tape.
And that's a fantastic setup. So one of the guys, and also I feel like there's a generational story as well, because the secret of the town was, in the older generation, represented by Stuart's father, was kind of repressed. It was like that generation that held on to things, that kept things and buried things down. And he dealt with it with just drinking, and he always suspected something. He always suspected that the constable and his wife was involved with these killings, but he never said anything about it. Whereas the new generation, they'll uncover everything, but they're going to want to exploit it for their TikTok or their YouTube or their everything like that. They'll blast all secrets out. So both of them are unhealthy ways to like deal with the town secrets and things like that. And so. Oh, and we should talk about Stuart, because he's my
favorite character from the episode. That actor is awesome.
He was in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I know you're talking about. No, he was great. He was very funny. He's got great comic timing. And had all of the best lines in the episode.
And I think too, he was the most pure.
Yeah.
In the sense of like, he was the only one that was just open about. He just told the truth.
Yeah.
Right. He was blatantly told the truth. Saw everything for what it was. In the beginning, it's funny because he saw everything clearly, right? The way it is, and the way he talked about his father and the way his relationship. And karmically, within this episode, he was the one that did well.
Yeah, because the only thing he wanted to have happen, because this story and the secrecy and all that stuff behind the story destroyed the town.
Yeah.
And, his father owns a bar there that he works at. Nobody's in there. He's talking about how they're probably going to go under. And when he sees them talking about the documentary, all he sees is maybe people will realize that is over, and so they'll start coming back, right? That there's not this dark secret to the place. It'll all be exposed to the light, and then people will come back and it'll be a tourist town again.
Because he was a townie in the best sense of the word townie, where he just loved his town.
He loved the town.
You can tell he's one of those guys that had pride and generational tradition within this pub, and he loved the town and the pub, and he wanted it to succeed. And there was something really honest and pure about him, and I think that's why he had the best outcome.
Yeah, nothing bad happened to him. He got everything.
He got everything he wanted. And he's like, "Hey, man, you got the award, and everything's good." Black Mirror does, have twists and things like that, but it's really ultimately the ending always hits you hard, even if it's what you anticipated. It's harder than how you anticipated it, right? And so, he gets this award. He gets all the success he ever wanted, but he knows that he hoard himself out and used this, and all the people around him sucked that out of him, and now he's, useless.
I would say, so while Twilight Zone often had incredibly rich moral and ethical stories that it dealt with, Twilight Zone's twists were often supernatural. They were often a surprising supernatural kind of thing was the twist, right? That, the people who've been trying to get out of the can, it turns out that they're dolls at the bottom of a can, right? Yeah. It's that kind of twist.
Right.
Black Mirror really leans more into the moral ethical twist side, where what you're talking about, it's the genie's curse, right? Like you get the wish that you wanted, but the wish brings you unexpected consequences. So the other part of the twist with Davis is not just that he was part of a successful thing, but it wasn't even his thing. Somebody else made the documentary. He's just a character in it. So instead of being the documentarian who creates a thing out of other people's moments, because he's directly tied to this event, he's tied to the crimes that happened, he winds up becoming a character rather than the documentarian. Mm-hmm. So he's up on stage and he's holding the trophy and all that, but it's someone else's victory. Mm-hmm. It's someone else who's taking victory laps over this. He's just kind of there.
Yeah.
And then in that moment you talked about where they're like, well, this isn't about us. The most important person up here is Davis. Or it was his life story and stuff. And you can see how uncomfortable he is with that.
Yeah.
That he's realizing this is the thing I was going to do to somebody else. Yeah. And now it's being done to me. And every secret about my family is being laid bare in front of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like Tiger King. You go and see Tiger King. That guy clearly is so obsessed with being famous.
Yeah.
Like he even made country videos where he was the star of the music. And this guy was so obsessed with being famous. And then this documentary turned its eyes on him, and he became intoxicated with being the star of the show. Yeah. And it even changed his behavior within the podcast. And ultimately, now when he's sitting in prison, what he's probably thinking is like, they just sucked they just sucked and left the corpse down like lifeless, and everybody forgets about me in the next month. So everything that I thought that I was getting was not about me. It's about a story that they created around me, and they just it just sucked me dry.
I became fodder for somebody else's.
Right, and it was, and also like the country, the world laughed at me. Where it was like, I'm showing my best side. I'm showing my best mullet, my best music video with the right lighting and everything. And it was just all a parody. It was all a joke. But let's talk a little bit about the mother, because what I thought was really interesting when she goes back and looks at the videos is you see that the father is a part of it, and then this other guy is a part of the torture chamber. But to me, the mother was the star of the show.
Oh, yeah. And probably the best actor in the episode. She's amazing.
But even as a killer, she was the star of the show.
No, I'm saying also.
Also, yeah.
The best actor with the juiciest part.
Right.
With the most stuff to do.
Right.
Yeah, this is a powerhouse performance.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're like, bring in, I can't remember her name, but bring her in, and she has that red mask, and the 1990s rap is playing, and she is clearly the star of the show.
Yeah.
She is the most talented at whatever torturous thing that they do.
She's got that fucking
She's got that power saw. And for her, it's like, you could tell it's like an art form.
Yeah.
The comments that she says, like, we had a great thing until he fucked it all up. And what is clear to me in retrospect when you go back is, and what makes her interesting and what makes this story interesting is that she clearly loves her kid. She cares about her kid and roots for her kid like a good mother will.
Yeah.
And so when he shows up, she understands what they are saying, like the personal hook and everything of the story. And so she allows herself to be a part of it, like to be interviewed from it.
Yep.
And there's a bit of there's almost an innocence to her malice where she's like, oh, I'm not used to all this setup with cameras. And then they're like, Phil's broadcast. She's like, could you imagine?
Right,
it's like, and like how that would be. But she kind of always told the truth. And when Mia, his girlfriend, came across that the actual footage and saw that the mother was the person, and the mother understood, and she ran off into the woods. When the mother says, and I believe this, when she says, I'm not going to hurt you, I believe that she wasn't going to hurt her.
Mm.
And then she's like, fuck, fuck. And she has that great, fucking loop. She's a fantastic actress.
Yeah.
And she breaks, and I'm like, and for every good, when somebody comes on screen and just their presence is fascinating to you, and you're like, I want to know more about this person and the shepherd's pie and the details that she puts in the cooking and her caring and everything. It's like, that's an interesting character. It's a well-written character. It's a well-performed character. I want to know more about this person. But what really hooked me is when Mia gets away, she knows that everything is going to come out. And she lines up all the tapes and she lays it nice and neat for him to come and see. Basically, she's like, it's for your film, Mom.
Yeah.
And it's like this sweet little gesture of oh, you're doing your little art project. I'm going to help you with your art project. And then she puts on the mask, which is this other personality, and then hangs herself. And or maybe that's who she really is, the mask. And so she hangs herself. But I thought that was very well done and really well executed. And this poor guy loses his girlfriend, loses his mother.
Loses his entire self-image.
His entire self-image.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
who he is, who his parents were, what his town was, everything. It's that moment. If you've ever had one of those moments where something that is foundational to your belief about the world is taken or goes away, and suddenly you're reevaluating everything that ever happened. My relationship with this person isn't all what I thought it was. It was this other thing, and it was hidden from me until this reveal happened.
Yeah.
If you've ever had something like that happen, you can literally feel the ground moving under your feet. Mm-hmm. It knocks you off your feet. And that's this moment. This kid, everything he thought he knew about the world is gone now. And he has to start over from scratch.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the loss of identity.
Yep.
Which is the most, and that's a great point, because if you think about, look, our identities, who we think we are, is kind of an illusion anyway. It's never really it is, but it'll fuck you up if you lose that, because that's how you ground yourself and orient yourself to the world. Yeah. So when he's sitting there and everything has been ripped away from him, and like you said, not only he loses his mother, his father, his girlfriend. Everything that he thought would be success is really kind of taken from him because it didn't manifest the way he wanted it to manifest. And on top of that, like you said, he lost his identity. So he is completely sucked dry at the end and just a shell of himself. And he, like his buddy Stuart, he's like, the boy's back over here. And everybody's like, yeah! And everybody's cheering and thinking it's just a triumphant moment for him.
Stuart is having a great time.
Stuart's having a great time. And he can't even talk on the phone. And, he doesn't even answer him. He just drops the phone and he's drinking his thing. I thought that ending was a powerful way to bring home the statement of what that show was saying.
Even and if you pay attention, the champagne that's sitting on the table that he starts drinking, it's like, congratulations from Streamberry. Yeah. It's even the drink he's drinking to console himself is a bitter reminder of these people have sucked everything out of him, and his prize is a stupid statue and a glass of champagne. That's what he got, right?
Oh, and what a really smart scene is when his producer is talking to an actress about playing his girlfriend. Yeah. And they were like, oh, you'd be great, Mia. His girlfriend's dead. And, it's the one that he got together with this thing, and they did this.
Well, and in that moment, too, and you know this as well as anybody, you've been in that world, the horrific dishonesty of fame culture, where she's like, oh, this bitch over here, did you watch her? And then,
dude, what a Hollywood moment, right?
Such a Hollywood moment.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh my God, I loved you in that thing. We're looking for a Mia. Yeah. And it is the classic Hollywood moment where you're talking shit about somebody, they walk over, and then you pretend like you love everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for hanging out. I hope you enjoyed our episode on Black Mirror. We were going to talk about 3. We ended up talking about 1, but then we're going to have multiple episodes because the next one we're going to talk about is Demon 79. Please like and subscribe. I love you guys.
He says that to everybody.
No, you know what I want? I want. I'd like to have more an ongoing conversation in terms of Black Mirror. I'd like to hear what other people that are watching Black Mirror, what they think, if they agree with us, if they don't agree with us. Is there something that we didn't see or we interpreted it the wrong way? Because I haven't read anything about it. I haven't followed up. I really am a fan of Charlie Brooker. I think he's a fantastic writer. I love the series. But I haven't done like the deep dives. I don't know where all the Easter eggs are or all the hidden meanings, or if I'm even off, if this is so far from what Brooker had intended with writing the episode. So if people have deeper knowledge, like feel free to
share. If you want to put some comments on this on YouTube, or if you're not on YouTube, if you're listening to the podcast through just as a podcast, there's a Discord server for Tying That Guy. If you want to leave comments there, Joseph can let us know when there's specific comments about it. We can go read them and stuff, and
we'll read them and talk about it. Follow-up episodes. Yeah, that'd be fun to do. Say goodbye, Tom.
Goodbye, Tom.